The cell was cold, lit only by the faint blue glow of the stasis chamber. Inside, the alien girl lay still, her body thin and pale. Frost lined the inside of the glass, making her look more like a statue than someone alive. Her chest rose and fell so slowly it was hard to notice she was breathing at all. Around her, the hum of the machines was steady, almost like a slow heartbeat. The people who passed by didn't look at her for long. To them, she was already gone, just a body waiting for the final order. The human engineer stood at the door, his breath fogging in the icy air. He had only arrived on the mining outpost 2 days ago, sent to repair a failing reactor. This room wasn't part of his assignment, yet something had drawn him here. He read the small screen beside the chamber. Vital signs were faint but present. Name, classified. Status, last stasis. Prognosis, irreversible. His eyes lingered on that last word. Irreversible was just another way of saying no one had tried hard enough. He turned when footsteps echoed behind him. An alien guard, tall and armored, stepped into the room. "Why are you here, human?" The voice was flat, suspicious. The human didn't answer right away, still staring at the girl in the chamber. The guard followed his gaze. "She's done. Her people have no use for her now. The chamber will be shut down in 2 days to save power." The human frowned. "She's still breathing." "Barely," the guard said, almost amused. "Last stasis means the body has chosen to stop. No medicine can change that. When they enter this state, they are already saying goodbye." He left without another word, but the human stayed. He stepped closer, placing a hand on the glass. The cold bit into his skin. Her face was delicate, though there was a faint scar running across her temple, disappearing into her dark hair. He wondered what she had seen before ending up here. Was she a soldier? A criminal? Or just someone caught in the wrong place at the wrong time? Later, back in the engineering bay, he couldn't focus. Every time he tried to work on the reactor codes, he saw her lying there, the frost creeping around her like a shroud. He searched the station's network, but most of her file was locked. The few details he found were vague. Rescued from a battlefield, injuries severe, placed in medical stasis for long-term containment. No mention of family, no visitors, no one who cared if she lived or died. That night, he returned to the medical wing. The corridors were quiet, most workers asleep. He bypassed the lock on her room with a small device from his toolkit. The chamber's glow painted the walls in soft blue light. He stood there for a long time, watching her face. Something in the way she looked, peaceful but not at rest, gnawed at him. He knew about machines, not medicine. But he understood one thing. No system should be shut down while it was still running, no matter how weak the current. He knelt beside the chamber's control panel. The readouts were simple enough. Temperature steady, oxygen minimal, neural activity barely registering. But there was movement. Not much, not enough to wake her, but enough to prove she wasn't gone. His fingers hovered over the settings, tempted to raise the oxygen flow, but he stopped. Tampering would set off alarms. He needed to be careful. Suddenly, the faintest sound reached him, a tiny hiss, almost like a sigh. He looked up. Her lips had parted just slightly, frost melting on the inside of the glass near her mouth. It could have been a trick of the machine, a shift in pressure. But to him, it felt like a sign. The next morning, he asked around in the mess hall, trying to learn more. Most workers shrugged. Some didn't even know she existed. One older mechanic shook his head. She was trouble, that one. Heard she crossed the wrong people. No one survives after that. Best let her go, human. But he couldn't. That evening, he found himself in her room again. He spoke quietly, not sure if she could hear. "I don't know your name. I don't know why they left you like this, but I know you're still in there. I've seen dead machines, and I've seen ones that just need the right spark. You're not dead." His voice was steady, though he felt foolish talking to someone who couldn't respond. Yet as he spoke, the faint pulse line on the chamber's screen flickered. Once, twice, slightly stronger than before. He leaned closer to the glass. Her eyes stayed closed, but something deep inside him told him she had heard. When he left that night, he didn't feel like a stranger to her anymore. The image of her face, the slow breath, the faint change in the monitor, it stayed with him. The countdown to the chamber's shutdown was still ticking, but now he had a plan forming in his mind. He didn't know how yet, but he would find a way to reach her. And if no one else cared, then it would be him who stood between her and the end. The next day began with the same metallic hum of the mining outpost. But for the human engineer, every sound carried a sense of urgency. He checked the clock. 47 hours left before they would cut power to the stasis chamber. The image of the alien girl's pale face haunted him. He had fixed broken engines and cracked reactor cores, but this was different. This wasn't about metal or wires. This was about life, and he didn't even know if it could be saved. He went to the medic's ward under the excuse of repairing the oxygen regulators. The chief medic, a thin alien with silver skin and sharp eyes, barely looked up from his screen. "Stay out of the stasis wing, human. That's not your department." The human ignored the warning. "How does her species recover from last stasis?" The medic scoffed. "They don't, not unless they have a strong reason to return. Even then, it's rare. Their bodies shut down when they decide there's nothing worth living for. It's the mind, not the body, that kills them." The words stuck in his mind. Nothing worth living for. It wasn't just her injuries keeping her in that chamber. It was something deeper, something emotional. If she had no reason to come back, no medicine would ever work. He returned to the engineering bay and locked the door. Pulling up the station's restricted files was risky, but he knew where the gaps in the security were. Hours passed as he sifted through encrypted logs, old transmissions, and battlefield reports. Piece by piece, her story emerged. She had been a decorated soldier in her people's army. Her record spoke of bravery, countless victories, and loyalty beyond question. But her last mission had ended in disaster, cut off from her unit, heavily wounded, abandoned while the enemy closed in. The report didn't say why they left her. Maybe betrayal. Maybe politics. The human leaned back in his chair, anger twisting inside him. She had fought for them, and they had left her to die. No wonder she didn't want to wake up. That evening, he returned to her chamber. He stood close, watching the slow rhythm of her breathing. "You were a fighter," he said softly, "but they broke you. I'm not them, and I won't leave you." A faint tremor moved across her fingers, almost invisible through the frost. His eyes widened. It could have been a muscle reflex, or maybe she heard him. The next day, he tried something new. He brought an old portable console from his quarters, connecting it to the chamber's communication port. He knew the stasis system had a neural feedback channel, a way for medics to send calming signals into a patient's brain. Instead of the usual patterns, he loaded a recording of a human heartbeat, strong and steady, mixed with his voice speaking in slow, clear words. "You are not alone. You are safe. You are not forgotten." Hours passed with no change, but he didn't give up. Every break from his repair work, he returned to sit by the chamber and speak to her. Sometimes he told her about the station, sometimes about the strange food in the mess hall, and sometimes about Earth's oceans and forests. He didn't know if she could understand the words, but he hoped the tone carried through. That night, as the chamber's sensors recorded another hour of near-frozen stillness, he noticed a slight change in the neural activity graph. It was tiny, barely a ripple, but it was there. He leaned forward, his voice low. "Come back. I'll be here when you do." The next morning brought a new problem. While passing through the corridors, he overheard two guards talking. "That human's wasting his time," one said. "If she wakes, she could talk about what happened on that mission. The higher-ups won't like that. Better she stays in the dark." The human felt a chill that had nothing to do with the outpost's cold air. This wasn't just about saving her. Someone wanted her gone for good. And if they thought he was getting too close, they might make their move before the official shutdown. He worked faster, skipping meals to piece together a plan. First, he needed more direct contact. The chamber was designed to keep patients insulated from outside touch, but he could modify the panel to allow a brief override. It was risky. Too much disturbance could destabilize her condition, but it might be the only way to make her feel something real, something that reminded her of life. That evening, he carried a small toolkit to the stasis wing. The corridors were quiet, and the guards had changed shifts. In minutes, he had the panel open, wires exposed. His hands moved quickly, bypassing the security failsafe. A soft beep confirmed the override. The glass cover slid back just a few inches, enough for him to reach inside. The air was bitterly cold. He took her hand gently, surprised at how light it felt. Her skin was icy, but there was still warmth deep beneath it. "You're not alone," he whispered again. I'll fight for you, even if you can't fight right now. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, under his fingers, he felt the faintest pressure, so light he might have imagined it, but he didn't let go. The clock was still ticking, and now more than ever, he knew he had to work fast. Someone out there wanted her silent forever, and he was the only one standing in their way. The human sat in his quarters with the lights dimmed, the station's quiet hum surrounding him. He stared at the cracked datapad on his desk, its screen filled with fragments of her file. Every detail he uncovered painted a sharper picture of the alien girl in the stasis chamber. Her name was still hidden, but her record showed a history of bravery. She had once led squads into battles most soldiers wouldn't return from. Her tactics had saved colonies. Her courage had inspired entire units. She wasn't some fragile victim. She had been a force to be feared. But her last mission was different. The reports were vague, too vague. Her squad had been deployed to a hostile planet. Communications had been lost. And she had been found later by a civilian salvage crew, alone, covered in blood, half conscious. There was no mention of the others. No commendations followed. Instead, she was quietly moved to medical stasis, and all files above basic clearance were locked. It wasn't hard for him to guess why. Someone wanted her forgotten. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. The more he learned, the more he understood why she might have given up. A soldier who lived for her people had been abandoned by them, left to die, then frozen away, like a problem no one wanted to solve. The next day, he went to the stasis wing early. The corridors were still, the air cold. He sat beside her chamber, close enough that the frost on the glass blurred her face. "I know they left you," he said softly, "but I'm not them. I won't leave you." Her vitals were faint but steady. He connected the portable console again, opening the neural link. This time, he increased the connection strength, ignoring the risk warnings flashing across the screen. His vision blurred for a moment, and then he was inside. It wasn't a place, not exactly. It felt like drifting through shadows, broken flashes of images floating past, ruined buildings, black skies, the sound of gunfire in the distance. Then he saw her. She was standing in the middle of a street littered with debris, a weapon in her hands, her eyes sharp and unyielding. But she didn't see him. He stepped closer. "You're not alone," he called out. She turned, frowning, as if trying to place his voice. A wall of static washed over them, and the scene shifted. Now they were in a dark room, her back against a wall, breathing hard, her weapon empty. Outside, alien voices shouted orders. She was trapped, bleeding, and no one was coming. He reached for her shoulder. "I'm here." Her eyes widened. You weren't there before." Her voice was weak, almost lost in the noise. "I am now," he said firmly, "and I'm not leaving." For a moment, her gaze softened. But then the scene fractured again, collapsing into darkness. His link connection faltered, alarms on the console warning of strain to both their neural pathways. He pulled back, his head pounding. When his vision cleared, he was staring at the chamber's glass again. Her heart rate was slightly higher than before. Only a little, but enough to prove he'd reached her. Over the next hours, he returned to her memories again and again, each time staying longer. He walked beside her in moments from her past, saw the way she moved with confidence, the way her voice commanded respect. But he also saw the moment it all broke. Her calling for backup, her voice shaking, the silence on the comm channel, the sound of footsteps retreating instead of coming to her aid, her eyes going cold when she realized she'd been left to die. He didn't try to explain it away. He didn't tell her to forget it. He just stood beside her in those moments, refusing to leave when everyone else had. By the third session, something had changed. She didn't look at him with confusion anymore. She looked at him like she knew him, like he had always been there. Outside the chamber, though, things were getting dangerous. The station commander had noticed the humans' visits and ordered a watch on the stasis wing. The guards didn't confront him yet, but he could feel their eyes following him. He knew time was running out faster than the countdown on the chamber's shutdown. That night, he stayed longer than usual. Her dream world was quieter, the sky a pale gray instead of black. She was sitting on a low wall, her weapon set aside. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked without looking at him. "Because you're still alive," he answered, "and because someone has to." Her hands tightened on the edge of the wall. "It hurts to wake up." "I know," he said. But it's worse to stay here. She looked at him then, truly looked, and something in her eyes shifted. He couldn't name it, but it felt like the first spark of a fire long thought dead. When he disconnected, her vitals showed the strongest readings yet. Her heart rate had risen, her neural activity spiked, and for the first time, the chamber's system flagged her as possible recovery. He allowed himself a small smile. He was closer than ever to bringing her back. But he also knew that the closer she got to waking, the more dangerous things would become for both of them. Someone on the station had worked hard to keep her silent, and they wouldn't just stand by if he succeeded. The human sat in the medbay's dim light, the glow from the stasis chamber casting long shadows on the floor. His eyes were fixed on the faint rise and fall of the alien girl's chest. Every time he entered her dream world through the neural link, the connection grew stronger, but so did the toll on his body. The headaches were sharper now, his vision blurred after each session, and his hands sometimes trembled. Still, he couldn't stop. He was too close. He activated the link again, the hum of the console filling the room. His surroundings faded, and the familiar haze of her mind world formed around him. This time, the streets were clearer, no longer buried in darkness and static. He saw buildings in the distance, burned and broken, but the air was lighter. She was there, standing on a cracked road, scanning the horizon as if expecting trouble. "You came back," she said, her voice stronger than before. "I told you I wouldn't leave," he replied, stepping toward her. Her eyes narrowed slightly, as if testing his words. "You're not from my world. Why do you care?" "Because no one should be left behind," he said. "Not you, not anyone." For a moment, her gaze softened. She seemed to want to say more, but the sound of distant gunfire rolled through the air. She turned sharply, her body tense. The world shifted around them. The cracked road faded into a war zone. The sky turned red, and explosions lit the horizon. She was gripping a rifle again, her armor dented and blood-stained. "This is where it happened," she murmured. He knew what she meant, the place where her squad had abandoned her. "Show me," he said. She hesitated, then nodded. They moved together through the smoke and rubble. Voices shouted in the distance, but when they reached the ridge overlooking the battlefield, the comm units on her armor came alive. Static. Her voice echoed over it, recorded from that day. "Unit 3, I'm pinned down. Requesting backup. Repeat, requesting backup." No reply came. Her recorded voice grew more desperate. "They're closing in. Where are you?" Silence. The human felt a cold anger rise inside him. "They heard you," he said quietly. "They left me," she answered, her tone flat but heavy. He turned to face her. "And that's why you've been here, in this place, ever since. You think no one will come for you again." Her hands tightened on the rifle. "Why would they? I'm nothing to them now." "You're not nothing to me," he said. She stared at him for a long moment. The battlefield faded into the quiet street again. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. "It's dangerous for you to keep coming here," she said. "I've faced danger before," he replied, "and I'm not stopping." Back in the medbay, alarms began to chirp. Her neural activity was rising quickly, spiking higher than it had in months. Sweat ran down the human's temple, but he ignored it. He had to keep going. The dream world shifted again. Now they were inside a small shelter, dim light flickering overhead. She was sitting at a metal table, no weapon in sight. She looked different, less like the warrior he'd seen before, more like someone searching for a reason to move forward. "You don't understand," she said softly. "When we enter last stasis, it's not just our body shutting down. It's our will. You can't force me back." "I'm not forcing you," he said. "I'm giving you a choice, but you have to decide if living is worth it." She looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. "You're strange, human." "I've been called worse," he replied with a faint smile. Her lips almost curved into one too, but then the dream began to blur. The connection was slipping. The medbay alarms grew louder. He forced himself to hold on a few seconds longer. "You don't have much time," she said suddenly. "They'll stop you before I wake." His heart pounded. "Who?" But the dream shattered before she could answer. He ripped the neural link off his head, gasping for air. The medbay doors slid open, and the station commander stepped inside. His sharp eyes scanned the room, lingering on the open console. "You've been interfering with a classified patient," the commander said coldly. "I warned you to stay away." "She's not a patient," the human shot back. "She's a person, and she's getting stronger. That's exactly the problem, the commander replied. If she wakes, she could cause trouble for everyone. Or maybe she could fix the mess you're trying to hide, the human countered. The commander's lips thinned. 2 days left, human. After that, her chamber shuts down. Stay out of the way, or you'll join her. The door hissed shut as the commander left, but the human didn't move. His mind was racing. Now he knew for sure someone was actively working to keep her from waking. And she knew it too. He glanced at the chamber. Her breathing had grown slightly stronger. A small victory, but in the face of the danger ahead, it wasn't enough. He would need to push harder, take bigger risks. If they were counting down her last hours, he would make every single one count. And if the commander thought threats would stop him, he was about to learn just how stubborn a human could be. The corridors outside the medbay were quieter than usual, but the human could feel the tension hanging in the air. Word had spread in whispers. He was spending too much time with the girl in stasis, and the station's higher ranks didn't like it. Every guard he passed seemed to watch him a little too closely, hands never far from their weapons. He didn't care. The clock was still ticking, and now he knew for certain there were people who wanted her gone before the timer reached 0. He spent the day working on repairs in the engineering bay, but his mind was elsewhere. Each clang of his tools was matched by the faint image of her lying still in that chamber. He could still hear her voice from their last connection. They'll stop you before I wake. She hadn't been wrong. By late afternoon, he decided it was time to take the next step. Sneaking into the medbay was becoming more dangerous, and he needed a way to work faster once he got in. He gathered a small bag of supplies, portable medical scanners, a modified oxygen injector, and a vial of an experimental serum he'd salvaged from an abandoned research crate. It wasn't designed for her species, but it could stimulate neural pathways and boost heart function. The risk was high, but so was doing nothing. When night came, he waited until most of the crew were asleep. He moved through the maintenance tunnels, crawling past dusty pipes and humming conduits. The path brought him right behind the medbay's secondary access hatch, a door only technicians used. His stolen code bypassed the lock in seconds. Inside, the chamber's soft blue glow was the only light. The room was cold enough to make his breath cloud. He approached quietly, the weight of the serum heavy in his pocket. The chamber's status display blinked a slow warning, 40 hours left until shutdown. He placed his hand on the glass. "It's time," he whispered. He opened the control panel and carefully adjusted the life support settings, raising the oxygen slightly to give her system a push. Then he prepared the serum. The injector hissed as he loaded it, his hands steady despite the pounding in his chest. The glass began to slide open just enough for him to reach inside. The air around her was biting cold, but he ignored it, finding the spot near her neck where the serum would work fastest. "You might hate me for this," he murmured, "but I'm not letting you fade away." A voice cut through the silence. "Step away from her, human." He turned slowly. The station commander stood in the doorway, a pistol aimed directly at him. 2 guards flanked him, their weapons ready. "You've been warned," the commander said, his tone flat. "She stays in stasis. That's the end of it." The human didn't move. "She's not your property. She's alive, and she deserves the choice to wake." "She's a danger," the commander snapped. "If she speaks, she'll tear apart everything we've built here. We can't allow that." The human took a slow breath, his mind racing. He didn't have time to argue, not with the serum already loaded and the commander standing so close. He shifted slightly, as if lowering the injector, but instead he lunged forward, ramming his shoulder into the control panel. The guards shouted, but in that split second, he plunged the injector into her neck and pressed the trigger. The serum hissed into her bloodstream. The commander fired, the shot grazing the human's arm. Pain flared, but he kept himself between the gun and the chamber. The monitors erupted with rapid beeps. Her heart rate was climbing. The frost on the inside of the glass began to melt faster, droplets sliding down the surface. Her fingers twitched, the movement more pronounced than ever before. "Restrain him!" the commander barked. The guards rushed forward, but the human grabbed a tool from the open panel and swung it hard, catching one guard in the side of the head. The other hesitated for just a second too long, giving him enough space to shove him back. Behind him, a sharp gasp filled the air. He turned in time to see her eyes flutter open. They were unfocused at first, scanning the room, but then they locked on him. Her lips moved, forming his name, though he'd never told her. The commander froze, his weapon still raised, but his eyes wide. She pushed herself up slightly, ripping free the cables connected to her body. Her movements were weak but determined. The beeping alarms grew louder, warning of system failure, but she didn't stop. You... Her voice was raspy, almost a whisper. You came. The human stepped closer, ignoring the burning pain in his arm. I told you I wouldn't leave. The commander recovered his composure and aimed again, but before he could fire, she moved with sudden speed, grabbing his wrist and twisting hard. The gun clattered to the floor. In a single motion, she spun and slammed the commander against the wall, using his own momentum against him. The guards hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. She glanced at them, and for a moment, the soldier she once was returned to her eyes, a glare that made them both lower their weapons. She stepped toward the human, her breathing uneven, but her posture steady. We have to leave, she said quietly. He nodded, grabbing the small bag of supplies. The medbay's alarms were now echoing through the corridor, and more guards would be coming soon. Together, they moved toward the maintenance hatch, her steps shaky but growing stronger with each one. As they slipped into the dark tunnels, the human glanced back at the glowing chamber one last time. It was empty now, frost melting into puddles on the floor. She was free, and the fight to keep her that way had just begun. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and damp, the air heavy with the smell of rust and machine oil. The human led the way, his injured arm pressed close to his body to slow the bleeding. The alien girl followed close behind, her bare feet silent on the metal grating. She was still weak, but there was a sharpness in her eyes now, a focus that hadn't been there in the chamber. Every few steps, she glanced back, listening for pursuit. They moved quickly, weaving through shadows lit only by the occasional flicker of a failing light strip. Alarms echoed faintly from far above, the station's voice announcing a medical breach and containment violation. It wouldn't be long before patrol teams swept the tunnels. Where are we going? She asked, her voice low and rough from disuse. Hangar Bay, he said without looking back. I have a small shuttle. If we can reach it before they lock down the exits, we're gone. And if we can't? He didn't answer. Her steps slowed slightly, her breathing uneven. She was pushing herself to keep pace, but her body had been still for too long. The human stopped, turning toward her. Without hesitation, he pulled her arm over his shoulder to support her weight. You're hurt, she said, noticing the blood soaking through his sleeve. It can wait, he replied. You can't. They pressed on, but the sound of boots clanging on metal soon echoed behind them. The girl stiffened. They're close. The human's eyes darted to a side passage. He led her into it, shutting the bulkhead door behind them. The space beyond was a storage room filled with crates stacked to the ceiling. He guided her into a corner, lowering her carefully to sit against a wall. You need to rest, he said. We don't have time, she argued, but her body betrayed her, trembling from the strain. He crouched beside her, pulling a small medkit from his bag. As he worked on his arm, she studied him. Why, she asked suddenly, why risk yourself for me? He didn't stop wrapping the bandage. Because you were left to die once. I'm not letting it happen again. She looked away, her jaw tightening. You don't even know what I've done. I know enough, he said, meeting her gaze. I know you didn't deserve to be thrown away. For a moment, neither spoke. Then a muffled clank came from the corridor outside. The human's eyes snapped to the door. He grabbed a wrench from one of the crates, pressing a finger to his lips. The girl's hand went to the side of her head, fingers brushing the small scar there. The bulkhead door rattled as someone tried the lock. The human moved silently toward it, pressing his ear against the metal. Voices murmured on the other side. A loud beep followed, the lock override trying to engage. They'll be through in seconds, he whispered. The girl scanned the room and spotted a vent shaft behind one of the crates. There, she said, pointing. He nodded, rushing to push the crate aside. The vent cover came off with a sharp metallic groan. He helped her climb in first, then followed, pulling the cover back into place behind them. The shaft was cramped, forcing them to crawl. It twisted and turned, every sound amplified in the narrow space. The human kept glancing back to make sure she was managing, but her determination was clear. Minutes later, the shaft opened into an upper-level maintenance catwalk overlooking the hangar bay. From here, they could see the shuttle docks. Security teams were already gathering, scanning ships and sealing doors. "They'll lock everything down in 5 minutes," he muttered. The girl's eyes swept the bay, landing on a small cargo hauler near the far wall. "That one," she said. "It's old. Security won't waste time on it." He smiled faintly. "You think like a soldier." "I was one," she replied quietly. They climbed down to the hangar floor, keeping to the shadows. Every step was a risk. Security drones buzzed overhead, scanning for heat signatures. The human kept his injured arm close, his free hand steady on the stolen pistol he'd taken from one of the guards earlier. When they were halfway across, a shout rang out. "There! Stop them!" Blaster fire lit the air. The human grabbed her wrist, pulling her into a sprint. They weaved between cargo containers as bolts scorched the floor around them. The girl moved faster now, instincts kicking in despite her weakened state. She grabbed a loose crate and shoved it into the path of the nearest guard, sending him sprawling. They reached the hauler's side. The human slapped the access panel, overriding the lock with his toolkit. The hatch hissed open, and they scrambled inside. "Strap in," he ordered, sliding into the pilot's seat. The engines roared to life, drawing the attention of every guard in the bay. More fire rained down, striking the ship's hull. Warning lights flashed, but the engines held. The girl strapped herself in beside him, gripping the seat tightly as the hauler lurched forward. The hangar doors began to close. The human pushed the throttle to its limit, the old ship rattling under the strain. They shot through the narrowing gap, the metal scraping the hull as they cleared it. Beyond the station, the blackness of space stretched endlessly. The human let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The girl leaned back in her seat, her eyes fixed on the stars. "You're free," he said quietly. She turned to look at him, a faint spark in her expression. "For now, but they won't stop coming." "Then we'll be ready," he replied, his voice steady. Somewhere behind them, alarms still echoed through the station, but here in the cold silence of space, they had bought themselves a little time. And for the first time since he'd found her, she didn't look like someone ready to fade away. She looked like someone ready to fight. The cargo hauler drifted through the emptiness of space, its old engines humming low. The human kept his hands steady on the controls, eyes scanning the navigation screen. They had no fixed destination yet, only the need to put as much distance as possible between them and the mining outpost. Beside him, the alien girl sat in silence, watching the endless stars. Her posture was calmer now, but her eyes still carried the weight of everything that had happened. "You should rest," he said without looking at her. "I've rested enough for a lifetime," she replied, her voice steady but quiet. He knew what she meant. Months, maybe more, trapped in last stasis, frozen between life and death. She had only just come back, and now they were already running. A warning light flickered on the console. He frowned. "Long-range scanner just picked up a patrol ship. No ID yet." Her attention snapped to the screen. "They'll send more. The commander won't let me go." "He can't." "Then we stay ahead of them," he said simply. She studied him for a moment. "You don't even know why they wanted me gone. Why risk your life for someone who might bring you trouble?" He glanced at her briefly. "Because I know what it's like to be left behind, and I know what it's like when someone decides you're worth saving anyway." Her eyes softened, just slightly, but she didn't answer. Hours passed. They took turns scanning for any sign of pursuit. The hauler's food supply was limited, but he made her eat, insisting she needed her strength. She obeyed, though she still moved like someone ready to spring into action at the slightest threat. Later, when the ship was quiet except for the hum of the engines, she finally spoke. "In the war, I followed orders without question. I thought my people would do the same for me. I was wrong." He didn't interrupt. "They sent us into an impossible fight. I saw my squad fall one by one. I called for help. They heard me. I know they did, and they turned away. I was a liability. Better to let the enemy finish me than risk resources to save me." Her voice was calm, but her hands clenched into fists. "That's why I didn't fight the stasis. There was nothing left worth waking for." "Until now," he said. She looked at him, searching for something in his face. "Maybe." The console beeped sharply, breaking the moment. A new signal appeared on the scanner, fast, closing in. They found us, he muttered, adjusting the controls. The old hauler groaned as he pushed it to full speed. The girl stood, moving to the back of the cockpit. If they board us, I'll handle it. You're not at full strength, he warned. I don't need to be, she said, her tone leaving no room for argument. The patrol ship closed the gap. Weapons fire streaked past them, rocking the hauler. The human jerked the controls, weaving between floating debris from an old mining site. The narrow gaps and sharp turns made the enemy hesitate, but they kept coming. Hang on, he called. He pulled the hauler into a tight spin, diving toward a large chunk of broken asteroid. The patrol ship followed, but a second later, a piece of spinning metal slammed into their hull. On the scanner, their signal flickered and then vanished. They're out, he said, breathing hard. The girl steadied herself against the wall. You're good at running. Years of practice, he said with a faint smile. They didn't speak again until the patrol's signal was completely gone. Only then did the tension in the cockpit ease. She sat back down, staring out at the stars again. What will you do now? He asked. She thought for a moment. I can't go back to my people. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I can make sure they can't erase me. I still have skills. And I still have enemies who fear me. And allies, he said. She met his gaze. One at least. One is enough to start with, he replied. The silence that followed was different now, less like two strangers sharing a ship, more like two soldiers sharing the same fight. After a while, she stood and walked to the small storage compartment. She pulled out a folded piece of fabric, part of her old uniform, worn and torn from the battlefield. She looked at it for a long time, then placed it carefully on the console between them. If I'm going to survive, I need to remember who I was, she said. And I need to decide who I'll be now. The human nodded. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly ahead. Somewhere beyond them was a place they could disappear for a while, regroup, and plan their next move. For now, they had space, time, and each other. And for the first time since she opened her eyes, the alien girl didn't feel like someone running from death. She felt like someone moving toward life.